I have worked at Ashwood for 35 years and in all that time, I have learned to see without watching and to hear without listening. It is the first discipline of the house. You move through a room as the room requires. Quiet, efficient, invisible. And you carry home nothing you were not meant to carry. I believed, for most of those years, that I was rather good at it. Elena Voss taught me I had missed the most important thing in the building. She had been with us for 11 of those 35 years, when the Harwick party arrived. A weekend gathering. Lord Harwick's annual late autumn affair, 12 guests. The usual arrangement of shooting by day and music and conversation by night. The guests were well-heeled and at ease with themselves, the sort who had never once wondered whether the staff could hear them. Elena ran the upper floor with a precision I had always admired. Silent, unflappable, a woman who seemed to occupy no more space than was strictly necessary. She was 32 that November. I don't think a single guest in the whole 11 years had learned her name. The trouble, if you could call it that, began on the Saturday evening. The party had drifted to the music room after dinner, and the center of gravity, as it always did in those gatherings, had settled around the man I will call Mr. Calder. He was a concert pianist of genuine and well-publicized distinction, the sort of man who wore his talent like a second evening jacket. He had been performing for the guests all weekend, accepting their admiration with a graciousness so well practiced it had become indistinguishable from arrogance. I stood near the door, attending to the brandy, and I watched him scan the room with the comfortable authority of a man who knows his position in every space he enters. It was then that he noticed the piano bench. It had been moved, set back at an angle, not as he'd left it. He called for silence with a lifted hand, the way a man calls for silence when silence is owed to him, and asked, in the tone of an amusing inquiry, whether someone had been at the Bosendorfer while he was at dinner. No one answered. His eyes moved to me. I said that I was not aware of any guest having done so. One of the staff then, he said, not an accusation, a slight, dry, entertained observation, the way a man observes a dog that has attempted to sit in a good chair. He turned to face the door, to face specifically Elena, come to collect the dessert glasses, and had stopped in the doorway. You, perhaps, he said. Come now. This is Ashwood. We're informal here. If you've been having a go at the keys, you must show us. It's only fair. He smiled, wide and easy, and glanced at Lord Harwick, who gave a courteous, indulgent nod. The room was amused. Could feel it. The gentle ripple of anticipation that forms when people expect to be entertained, and the thing they expect to be entertained by is someone else's embarrassment. Elena stood with the tray. She looked at Lord Harwick. He nodded again, one small, kind movement. I do not know what passed through her mind in that moment. I know only what I saw on her face. Something that had been still for a very long time deciding, quietly, to move. She set the tray on the sideboard. She crossed the room without hurrying. She sat down at the Bosendorfer. Calder had already begun composing an expression of patronizing delight, the face he would offer when she stumbled through a few bars of something simple. I had the same expression ready, I'm ashamed to say, though mine was softer, the face of a man braced to feel sorry for a colleague. The room arranged itself around her, glasses in hand, waiting. She placed her hands on the keys, and then she played. The opening bars of the Adagio from Beethoven's Pathétique. If you know it, you know that it begins gently, almost privately, like a confidence told in a quiet voice. Elena did not play it the way a student plays it, or the way a careful amateur plays it. She played it the way someone plays something they have carried inside them for so long that it has become indistinguishable from breathing. First phrase floated into that room, and the conversation stopped. Not faded, stopped. Every face turned. Calder's smile did not disappear all at once. It went slowly, phrase by phrase, like the last light leaving a room. By the second page it was gone entirely, and in its place was something I had never seen on a man of his particular vanity, the expression of someone who is hearing, for the first time and longer than they can remember. Something they cannot improve upon. The Adagio moved through its long, unhurried arc. But then something unexpected happened. Elena reached what should have been the end, the natural resting place of the movement, and she did not stop. Her fingers shifted, and the theme opened into something that was no longer Beethoven's alone. A variation, or more than a variation, An unfolding conversation with the original that went somewhere the original had never quite reached. Her own, entirely. I cannot tell you its technical name. I can tell you that it sounded like all the years she had spent in this house, silent and purposeful and unseen, and like the private life she had lived inside that silence. The depth she had hidden, because no one had thought to look. The room was absolutely still. I have stood in the presence of many beautiful things in 35 years of service, and I have learned to receive them with decorum, the way one is supposed to receive beautiful things. I was not able to do that. My hand holding the brandy decanter, I became aware of it only because it had begun to shake. Across the room, Lady Harwick had her hand pressed against her chest. The woman beside her, who had been laughing brightly at one of Calder's remarks not 20 minutes before, was crying, without appearing to realize it. The improvisation crested and came to rest on a single held chord, simple, clear, and final, the way a door closes gently in a house at the end of a long day. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Then Lady Harwick rose to her feet. Then Lord Harwick. Then all of them, one after another, a standing ovation in a private music room, which I had not seen in 3.5 decades at Ashwood, and did not expect to see again. The applause was not polite. It was the real thing. Grateful. A little stunned. The sound of people who had been given something they had not known they needed. Mr. Calder was the last to stand. He did it slowly, as though the act required a kind of courage he was searching for. When he was finally on his feet, he did not applaud immediately. He stood and looked at Elena, who had already risen from the bench, posed and quiet, her hands at her sides, and for a moment his face was entirely unguarded. Every practiced expression had been stripped away. What remained was simple. The face of a man who has just understood something about the world that had not been explained to him before. He began to applaud. His head dropped forward once. Not a bow, exactly. Something more involuntary than that. An acknowledgement. Then he brought his hands together again and kept them going until the room was done. Elena moved back across the room. She collected the tray from the sideboard. As she passed the door, I stepped aside, and I said nothing, because there was nothing in my vocabulary equal to the moment. She glanced at me, just once, briefly, and I saw something in her expression that I had never seen in 11 years of working alongside her. Not pride, exactly. A quiet recognition, as if a room she had kept locked for a very long time had finally been opened and found to be in perfect order. She carried the tray out into the corridor, and the door swung closed behind her, and the party continued. I have thought about that evening many times in the years since. I think about Calder's face when he finally stood. I think about Lady Harwick's hand on her chest, and the tears on the face of a woman who didn't know she was crying. Mostly I think about Elena at that bench. The stillness of her, the unhurried certainty, all those years of carrying something beautiful in silence, and never needing anyone to know it was there. She gave the house 11 more years after that evening. She left to marry a man in the village, a quiet, decent man who, I am glad to say, very good taste. I never heard her play again after that night. I don't think I needed to. Once is enough, when a thing is done exactly right. The Bosendorfer is still there. The bench has never quite been put back where it was before she moved it. I leave it where she left it, every time. Some things you do not correct.